Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. They finally caught me. It finally caught up to me. I just got laid off at the end of March with my entire organization. It was one of those typical come to work, emergency meeting. Somebody from the executive team who you usually don't talk to is on the call, along with other people in HR who you've never seen. And they do that mass casualty layoff event. It was pretty surreal being part of it. And I was shocked because here I thought, man, I'm at a really big, stable company. I really saw a future there. And then within, 30 seconds, it was taken away. Now, this is not going to be a big layoff fear-mongering post. In fact, this is a really positive episode, and I want you to stay through it because I don't want to scare you off and think this is going to be one of those poor me, pity me, I'm one of the new layoff victims out there. If anything, I think this is a story that should encourage you to seek employment within the tech sphere, and generally why I don't think layoffs are the biggest deal in the world. Unfortunately, I don't think this will be my last one. I know a few people on my team, this was their third layoff. I just know that there's zero industries or organizations or places you can hide nowadays. So if you want to hide from layoffs or changes and think that stability can only be found in like trade jobs or Fortune 100 companies or at the biggest tech company you've heard of, that's just not true anymore. So what can we do is keep our skills sharp and make sure that we're ready when the inevitable comes at us. So I got laid off on this day, along with a ton of other people. This was not a tech layoff, which I want to make very clear. I think that tech people, unfortunately, take up way too much of the space online when we talk about layoffs and things like that. It's always, all the tech workers getting laid off. You read the paper, it's about the 200 people at Google getting fired. And it's never about the other 1,000 people that are in marketing, sales, other functions within these organizations that are also getting laid off and just don't have as big of a microphone and don't take up as much of the public consciousness. And you know why that is? Because for so long, tech has been the untouchable thing. It's been, oh, I'm in tech, and that's untouchable. And so people have this reaction to seeing engineers getting laid off and saying, yeah, see, it can happen to you too. So there's a little bit of dunking on software engineers. I think that also comes from our tendency to be online and talking about drinking freaking lattes all day or bowling in the company bowling alley or playing foosball or drinking beers at like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. Generally, this whole facade that working as a software engineer was super chill and easy, which maybe it was at a couple of these massive companies like Google, Meta, Apple, Netflix. I've never heard of a software engineer telling me that their day was super chill or that they just weren't stressing out over some deadline. But hey, it made for really good content. So I think people saw that, they ran with it. They thought, who are these people getting these multiple six-figure salaries and goofing off all day? And I'm kind of glad to see them get laid off. And the reality is much more complicated as usual. Anyway, here I am in that same boat of people. I didn't want to write about it online because I thought, I don't want to add to this chorus of people like the pity party online. In general, if I'm going to ever choose to belong to a group, which I can, right? I don't have to belong to any group I don't choose to belong to, besides some of my naturally born traits that I can't really hide, right? But if I don't want to let people know I'm laid off, then I'm just not going to let people know that. Like, I don't want people's pity, because who do people pity? People pity the pitiful, which leads me to, there's this terrible game which we play online. Too many people play this. Who's got it worse? I've applied to 1,000 places and got rejected. I've applied to 1,000,000. Well, I grew up in a terrible area. Well, my mom has a drug issue. Well, my dad left me at this age. I could play that game if I wanted to. So could my partner. She grew up in one of the worst areas of East Oakland, in one of the worst areas of one of the worst cities in California, came from a refugee background in a war-torn country with parents who can't read or write. Now, does she win the game now? What about the person from the Congo that has an arm missing, or that grew up with zero parents? Did they win the game of who had it worse? And what is the prize for having it worse? Pity? Sympathy? It's not a prize I want. It's not a prize you should want. And I really hope you avoid that game. And I'm not saying this to say when bad things happen, you don't say anything. Do whatever you think is necessary or good to do. I think sharing some of my low points online has actually been really helpful. And I hope people respect it And I hope that's helped other people that may be at a low point in their life. But at the same time, I don't want to make my identity wrapped up in an event that happened to me. So this event happened, wasn't happy about it. I also realized I was very, very lucky. I know a lot of people are in this position that may look at this and think, well, hey, you probably got severance or you have 10 years of experience. You have 25,000 followers on LinkedIn. How hard could it be for you? And I'm going to get into that in just a moment, because the strategy that I used this time was very much like the strategy I used in the previous 5 times that I interviewed or was on the market looking for a job. The only difference in this time was I didn't choose to be on the market. But surprisingly, even to me, this time wasn't much different. I want to go through the themes that I've seen in every single time that I've had to go looking for a job. I've done at least 100 interviews over the last 10 years. Google, Facebook, Coinbase, Capital One, startups in Silicon Valley. I've bombed many, many of them. I've also nailed a lot of them. And surprisingly, the job search as a junior developer, mid-level, senior, and beyond has been basically the same. So here's the themes that I've noticed throughout my job searches, including this one. 1, recruiters get a lot of hate, but they're critical to your success. 2, LinkedIn is a necessary evil. 3, interview research can make or break the interview. What you do before the interview will determine the outcome of the interview in many cases. And finally, there are certain questions which always come up, which I'm going to get into, which you need to have an answer for. So whether you're looking for your first job or your 7th role as a developer, I think you're going to find this helpful. I just went through this, so I wanted to do this while it was still fresh in my head. I just got an offer a few days ago prior to recording this episode. Was it an offer that was the best one or the one I truly wanted? I'll be honest, I don't know yet. I have a lot of apprehension. Part of me is wondering if I should just take the time and focus only on Parsity. And part of me also just really likes what I do, which I think is one of the best things about working in this industry for me. And I think for a lot of us out there, I enjoy the work. I like writing code. I like leading teams. I have no intention of only doing Parsity or only doing software engineering. I want to do both, and I'm able to, so I will for now. But with all this stuff fresh in my head, I definitely wanted to share the learnings because I really hope it can help other people out there. So let's dive into the first point. Recruiters, they are your friends. Can we stop with all this recruiter hate already? I mean, I get it. They ghost you. They might see you're a JavaScript developer and they send you a position for a Java developer. Womp womp. I get it. But hey, here's the reality. These people are mostly non-technical people searching through a sea of developers who match a few keywords that a manager told them to look for. I have 25,000 plus followers on LinkedIn right now. I have to assume this helped me. But I will say this, the recruiters who found me were not connected to me on LinkedIn. Most had no clue that I was a talking head on the platform. In fact, the ones that did find that out, it actually worked against me. They said, well, do you want a business? And is this going to interfere with your ability to work? And I had to tell them about like, well, here's how my duties are split up. And here's how I've worked over the years by doing this. But no, they shouldn't. So in fact, it may have not been the best thing for me. Counterintuitively. In order to be found easily, though, I have keywords sprinkled throughout my job history and posts. Once I was laid off, I audited my profile to make sure things like Redux, JavaScript, TypeScript, AWS, all the other tech is represented in all the different jobs that I've done. I want to make it very easy for a recruiter when they're typing in senior React developer or AWS or whatever they're looking for, whatever the combination of keywords they're looking for, I want to make sure that I pop up for that combination of keywords. And you can apply that same exact strategy if you're a junior developer. If you're a student at Parsity right now, you should be doing this. And this is something we talk about. And now we're actually going to be working with another person who I'm going to be interviewing later, who is a recruiter, who's going to be working with our students too, to make sure that they do these exact same things. He's a developer and he's a recruiter, so he just knows the game. So I took a lot of his advice from this tech talk, actually, and I audited my profile to make sure I had these keywords in there, did the same thing in my resume, and then I didn't do this, but I should have, is make a few posts, LinkedIn posts, that have keywords, including the technology that I'm currently using in the post. Like, for example, I might say, working on a React.js app today using Redux deployed on AWS or whatever. And here's some things I learned. Is the post going to do well? Probably not. But here's the thing. If I pin that post to my profile, it can help me be more discoverable for recruiters that may be searching for that combination of skills. And the combination of skills recruiters are typically looking for are the ones that are most in demand. JavaScript, AWS, TypeScript, Next.js, Redux. What else? Did I say React already? The same stuff that we teach at Parsity, by the way, which is yet another reason to join. We teach the stuff that is the most commonly used in the industry, including a few things that most boot camps aren't yet teaching, like TypeScript, soon to be adding AWS and cloud stuff so we can teach you things like CI/CD and have people lean into DevOps as well, because I see that becoming a trend. The more and more companies want to hire people that can basically just do it all. So we're already a full stack boot camp, but now we're leaning even more into, well, what about like deployments in cloud and DevOps? Why not give some people familiarity with that as well? So did that help? I have to assume so, because once I did this change, I noticed I was getting on the radar from more recruiters, and I was really happy to work with them. I was quick to respond to them. I wanted to get them on the phone as soon as possible. I just wanted to see how fast can I get this next job. I was trying to speed run to this next job. And to be completely honest with you, I think I did it a little too quick, which is a great problem to have, by the way. I'm not complaining at all. Again, I have 10 years of experience and a ton of followers, and I have the right tech stack, maybe. So my path is going to be a little different than yours. But also, this is basically what I've done for the last 10 years. Next thing, you got to play the LinkedIn lotto. Have you ever gone on LinkedIn and you've looked at the jobs and you're looking at things like 500 applicants, 1,000 applicants in the last hour? Half of them have a master's degree. 10% of them are super senior roles. And you're thinking, how am I possibly going to compete? They're never going to pick me. And then you walk away in anger, you slam your laptop, you throw it out the window, and then you just go cry in a corner and eat a grilled cheese sandwich or something like that. Don't do that. There's a better way, my friend. So I was a manager and I was at the other end of this button. So I was the one asking the HR people I was working with to post the jobs, right? And I look on LinkedIn and said, oh my God, we got 200 applicants? Turns out 200 people might have clicked on the button. But when I spoke to the HR person, she only gave me 25 applicants to look from, 25 resumes that I was going to dig through, which is still a lot. Out of those 25 or so, I picked, 5 to do interviews, maybe more. And then out of that, 2 were actually chosen. So the odds were actually pretty good in people's favor. It's like the lotto. You can't win unless you play. I applied to less than 20 jobs via the Easy Apply. None of those actually resulted in an interview for me. I did see they got looked at. I did get auto-rejected quite a lot, even though I have more experience than some of the roles even required. And that was a little deflating. It definitely messed with my head. But I also try to tell myself, this is a game. There's so many reasons why you might get rejected that you really can't try to dig too much into it. It's a numbers game in some ways. And if I was really looking, like seriously looking, I'd be 5xing that number, meaning I'd be doing at least 100 jobs via Easy Apply. Not a day, but in general, like a week, a month, probably more like 100 to see like, okay, if I don't get anything out of 100, maybe I need to revisit my strategy or look at the keywords or other things that may be having people look at me and saying, nah, he's not a good fit. Also, I followed up with managers, CTOs, other engineers, if I really wanted the role. There were a couple that I'm like, oh, you know what? I'd probably actually be a really good fit here. I followed up. The other truth is most developers, CTOs aren't really active on LinkedIn. So I didn't get any response at all, which was a little deflating too. I was a little sad about that. I even made a video about it that shows my exact process, not unedited, exactly what I'm doing. And it's linked in the show notes of this episode. So check it out. I think it could be helpful. It's like 15 minutes long. And it goes through exactly what I'm doing. I think it's a decent way to approach things. And maybe you'll find something there that you think is helpful. So I did get some interviews though. And I bombed a few and I also won a few, right? So you should definitely do this one. This is something I'm convinced on. You need to hack your interview. You want to have it in your favor as much as possible. There's too much to study for a technical interview. It leads to most people just randomly doing leet code or code wars, or just reading random stuff. And instead, you should do this. Ask the recruiter or the manager, what is this interview going to consist of? Technical, behavioral, staring contests, grilled cheese eating contest? You want to know this kind of stuff so you can come prepared. Look on Glassdoor, Team Blind and Reddit for previous questions. I won't say too much about this one, but I did this for one of the companies where I was applying, and I thought there's no chance in hell I'm ever going to pass this crazy exam. I looked up the company and I saw an approach, not the answers, but an approach to doing the challenge that they give you. I did that very same approach and I was shocked. I made it to the final round at a pretty big tech company. And I was like, whoa, that's wild. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to move forward with them, but I'm going to go to the final round if I want to. So pretty cool, right? Final thing, write down the stories you plan to tell, which leads me to, there are a few stories which are always going to come up in interviews. Number one, tell me about yourself. Kind of my most hated question, because like, what does that mean? Like, where do you want me to start? When I was a child? Like, well, I grew up in Oakland, California, and my mother worked in a bank, and my father was a public school teacher. And like, hey, I didn't mean all that, buddy. But by the time I'm getting to the very end of my story, they might say, hey, thanks for applying, but, the interview's already over, and the company's actually gone down in flames. CTO left already. But thanks for sharing your story. And you just sit there sad, So what instead you probably want to do when they ask to tell me about yourself, think about within the context of your life as a software engineer. You can say something like, well, my most recent role, I was a French fry cook at McDonald's. And I also had an interest in working web technologies, which led me to going to a boot camp. Since then, I've done some apprenticeship work and worked on a few other sites for friends, family, and local businesses, which led me to wanting to apply here to further my skills and also contribute to what I've learned along the way. That's a decent story. I might not tell them the whole French fry chef thing, but you want to tell them, like, make it short, make it concise. Tell them about, like, basically, I'm here to tell you about why you might want to hire me, maybe about why you are going to their company, saying, and I want to go to your company because I read such and such and such and such, and I think this would be a great fit for both of us as I have these skills. I know that your company's interested in X and I can provide Y. That's a great way to tell me about yourself because they don't really care. They don't know you enough to care about your previous life, right? The other one that always comes up is, tell me about a technical project that you worked on. What they really want to hear here is, tell me why I should trust you as a software engineer. And you might be thinking, well, what technical project have I really done? If you went to any boot camp, you have some technical project you can talk about. If you went to Parsity, you can talk about projects like the Agile project, which mimics the Agile workflow that you'll experience on any professional software team, which should impress most people because most boot camps do not do this. So that should be a pretty cool thing to talk about. Say, oh, cool, you're using some of the same language that I already use. You're talking about projects in the same way that I talk about projects. Very cool. Immediately establishes trust. And if you didn't go to Parsity, then you should just be talking about a project that you did that maybe you think is really cool. Maybe you built a full stack app, deployed it, and how has it helped you? Generally, you want to talk about the problem, how it was solved using what kind of technology, and what was the outcome of that. For example, maybe you say, I really love watching movies, but sometimes me and my partner, we sit down and we don't really know what to watch. And we have this fight over what to watch. So I thought, I'm going to build a full stack mobile app that's going to help us to determine what movie to watch based on our previous choices. So we rank movies that we've recently watched, we put them into the app, and then I run some AI over it, which then looks at the list of current movies that are available on Netflix using their API, and then tells me, based on our previous rankings, what it thinks we might like. And that's been a really cool project to do. And I used TypeScript, AWS, React, and React Native for this project. Boom. That is a cool way to start off an interesting conversation. They can say, whoa, that's really cool, actually. Like, tell me more about it. How did you deploy it? Do you have any tests associated with it? What is one thing you would change if you had to do it again? And you should have answers for these things because these are all other follow-up questions that are typical to happen. But if you have the story outlined about, like, okay, here's like the technical project I'm going to talk about, my role on it, what did it solve, the technology used, why I built it, that's going to lead to an interesting conversation. Another one, how do you handle conflict? This one comes up from everywhere from, like, if you want to work at a local grocery store to a freaking large tech company, everybody wants to know, like, how do you handle conflict? Have a story. If you've never had a conflict, think of something. You don't want to sit there and bumble around for these kind of things. Think of something. How do you handle conflict? Well, one time me and a classmate, we were we were discussing the trade-offs between using Redux versus this other React library for handling state management. And I said this and they said this, and we came to this agreement based on something. Can you make it up? I mean, sure, at the end of the day, they want to hear an example. The worst things people say are, how do you handle conflict? Well, the first thing I do is tell my manager and try to get them involved. I'm like, oh, great. Now I got to be the referee in this game. I don't want to do that. So you want to stay away from that kind of stuff. You can just look up the typical answers to these things and kind of just repeat them back. Lastly, if you're in a position like me, maybe you have a few years under your belt, they're going to want to hear an example of leadership. Like, how do you lead a team? How do you mentor others? How do you talk to the product managers and other teams to ensure that projects are on time and on task? And how do you explain technical things to a non-technical audience? Again, don't freestyle this stuff. Quite literally, I wrote down a few examples that highlight my experience as a developer and as a technical lead and a manager in all of these areas. I thought, here are the stories which are going to illustrate all the things that I want this person to know. Now, again, you can use this pattern: role plus problem plus your solution plus the tech plus the outcome. Here's an example. As a senior developer at my last company, we had an issue with code duplication across multiple sites. I created a shared UI library using React.js components that allowed the team to create features in a third of the time. I just hit every single one of those little pieces of the recipe to make that story. Using that pattern: role, problem, solution using tech, outcome. I'm going to warn you, I'm a cornball. I cannot help it. I got kids. I'm a little bit of a optimistic, naive type of person. You need to find a way to be optimistic. There are way too many articles out there and posts on social media telling you about nightmare scenarios. There's a reason why these stories gain so much attention. They're interesting, they're emotional, and importantly, they're unusual. That's why they become stories. Here are some truths. People are getting hired. Getting the first developer role always sucks. Tech jobs pay a lot. If it takes longer to get your first role, is it still worth it to you? Ultimately, I think it might be. Also, your path toward the first job is going to be your path. Rethink a strategy if it doesn't work. Take what makes sense from people like me, other people you read online, other podcasts, wherever you're getting this information from, and apply what you think makes sense and will work for you. Now, another thing I've noticed is it's going to take a lot more effort than you probably think to get that first role. It's still worth it. If you think about the long-term payout, not only in monetary gain, but in your lifestyle, it's so worth it for most people. If you've already gone the route of learning a little bit of code and you say, this is what I want to do, I'm pretty good at this thing, I think I like it a lot, and you've gone through a boot camp or a self-taught route or whatever, CS degree, whatever, and you say, I've dedicated my time to learning this craft, dedicate the same amount of time and effort and consistency to getting the first job. I don't care what you've read out there. I don't care about the person on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever article you've read about the person that never got hired after sitting out 1.5 million applications. If you're doing that, something's wrong. It needs to be recalibrated. Some people will have a shorter time span. Some people will have a longer one. That is the unfortunate truth. But I have never, and when I say never, I mean I have never seen a person who was consistent, recalibrated their strategy, was decent at coding, that never got hired. I have never seen it, and I don't know if I ever will. Good luck out there. I really hope that's helpful. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out varsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.